It seemed to start as a simple cold. Then authorities thought perhaps it was a standard flu. It wasn't long before it was clear that the world was dealing with something much, much worse. Countries tried denying entry, mandating shutdowns, and limiting travel. But it continued to spread. It spread to every corner of the globe, and it started mutating. Governments tried everything they could as thousands upon thousands were dying. Civil unrest began to spread. Now, almost 2 years into the pandemic, as the bodies are piling up, the worst has happened.
Hello and welcome to another 31 Days of Horror 2021 video, Toronto After Dark edition, yes. Now this film, I wasn't originally going to include it in the 31 Days of Horror, but then the more I thought about it, I was like, if this was a documentary about the subject, I would probably include it. So just because it's a comedy, it's not necessarily horror, so keep that in mind, folks. This is not a horror film. But when you have a wide definition of what you cover and you look at in terms of the horror type stuff, I kind of have to include it. And that's because this is a comedy around like Wiccans. Like, it's all about a group of people who essentially practice Wicca, which makes them witches. And since witches fall right into Halloween, fall into horror, and all that kind of stuff, I mean, just because a movie isn't scary doesn't make it not horror, right? So keep that in mind. This is kind of like a broad spectrum horror. This is pretty much strictly a comedy film regarding witches, and not witches in the, fictional sense, but in terms of the actual religion of Wicca and such. Kind of a spoof on that. And we are talking about the film King Knight, which came out in 2021. It runs about just over an hour and 18 minutes. And essentially it's sort of a I don't know what you would call it. It's a modern day coven, and it centers around the head priest and priestess, are the two main characters. And they're, without saying too much, the head priest ends up in a little bit of a conundrum, and has to go on a journey to find himself, or something like that, like a a spirit journey or so. I don't know. Now I will say I don't know a ton about the Wiccan religion in terms of the actual religion. I know a lot about the history of witches and witches in film and such like that. So I don't know if they did actual research, if anybody of that particular religion was approached or consulted or anything like that with regards to this film. But as you can see, Leslie is not here, and that's because her whole thought on the film was, meh, whatever. It is what it was. It wasn't really funny. Yeah, so I don't really need to sit here and make a video and talk about it. Yeah, she wasn't impressed, essentially. And I understand that. Like I said, it's pretty much a straight up comedy. And it does involve what is an actual religion. So you could take some offense to some of the stuff that's going on in this film. But that being said, let's start off with the people who are involved with it, and that's we'll start with the writer slash director, Richard Bates Jr., who is actually done quite a few a few films that have played at the festival itself in previous years. He's I think probably most well known. I think his first film, Excision, kind of got people like, wow, this is somebody we need to take take a look at. And then I know that his follow-up film, Suburban Gothic, did play at the festival. And then he did Trash Fire and Tone Deaf before doing King Knight. So he hasn't done a lot, but he's really maintained being in the genre. So, I mean, that's another reason why I thought, well, you know what, I gotta include him. All of his other films are genre films, essentially. And so, just because this is more of a comedy straight about sort of like a religious group, doesn't make it quite not horror. I know. People have different definitions of horror. If it doesn't have a slasher killing people and stuff like that, it's not horror. There's no gore. There's no scares. Doesn't mean it's not horror? No, it just means it's different. The film stars as the high priest, Thorn, Matthew Gray Gubler, who has been in most of the past films of Richard Bates Jr., but most people will know him from Criminal Minds. That's where he spent... When he's not doing films for Richard, he's essentially doing... he's been in Criminal Minds, and I think Criminal Minds has ended. I think it has ended. It ended like last year, I think, 2020 was the last of it. But yeah, he was Dr. Spencer Reed, kind of the meek but super duper intelligent. I guess you call almost like an analyst in that show. His life partner, not his wife, but his life partner, Willow, is played by Angela Serafian. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Now, she's been in a lot of stuff. And, I mean, it's not all genre work, so bear with me here. I'm trying to think of stuff that you might have known her for. I mean, she did show up in one episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but she's done a lot of television in terms of one-offs in a lot of stuff. But in terms of film work, she was in A Beautiful Life. She was in The Informers. Not that those were, something that you would know her from, and they're not really what I would call genre work. Oddly enough, she was in one episode of Criminal Minds. So perhaps there's some meaning there. I think the first genre film that you might know her from, and it's a long shot, maybe, I don't know, is from the Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2, where she played Tia. From that on, she went into Speed Demons, Paranoia, Vampire Riders, American Horror Story. She was in 2 episodes of that. And lately, people might know her from Westworld, the television show where she played Clementine Pennyfeather. Other people of note, an odd person in this film, which I mean, well, I'll go through it and whatever. I don't recognize any of these people, but other members of the Coven include Percival, played by Andy Milanakis, Rowena, played by Kate Comer, Angus, played by Nelson Franklin, Echo, played by Emily Chang, Desmond, played by Johnny Pemberton, Neptune, played by Josh Fadem. But the one thing I wanted to mention was this sort of like off role of Merlin the Wizard, played by, of all people, Ray Weiss. Ray Weiss plays Merlin. Yeah. This kind of, I guess he's a spirit guide to Thorn. And so there's this whole thing where, I totally wasn't expecting this. I'm just watching it, and then Ray Weiss pops up, and I'm just like, what? Oh, man. Okay. This took an interesting twist, because Ray Weiss is, I mean, it's actually kind of a perfect role for him. He is kind of a bizarre type of a person in terms of what he picks up and does. So him playing this spirit guide Merlin actually works. It's so weird. And having him be one of the biggest people involved in the film, it really is it's kind of like icing on the cake. The film itself, like I said, it's mostly a comedy, but I didn't really find it that funny. I did have a few laugh out loud moments in it, but oddly enough, I'm not so sure if they themselves, well, yes, they were supposed to be funny, but I think there was a lot more things that were supposed to be funny, which I don't know. I guess maybe my mindset has changed a little bit, but their funny was it was almost like they were trying to make fun of people, different types of people. And then there were things where they were trying to make fun of people, but then they were like recanting themselves in the film itself and being like, well, sort of like you try and tell a joke and then somebody in the film goes, you can't say that, blah, blah, blah. That type of an idea without doing that itself. So they, on one hand, they were trying to be non-PC, and on the other side, they were trying to be PC, and it was like a weird mixture. There was a few moments in the film where I felt if they had have maybe explained it a little bit more and done a little bit of exposition on those particular jokes, that the jokes would have worked better. But yeah, I mean, there are funny moments. Don't get me wrong, there are funny moments. Some of it is at the expense of the Wiccan religion, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know enough about it, if the things are just stereotypes or if they actually are things that happen. I did recognize some things, but again, they could be because of stereotypes, they could be because of movies, again, I don't know enough. So I will say that if you are well versed in or a practitioner of Wicca, I don't know if you will find this movie funny or offensive. I do hope that you wouldn't take it as offensive, because it is done in lighthearted type jokes. But if they are jokes directly related to stuff that is actually part of the religion, that might be a little bit too much, but I think it may just be kind of caricatures of stuff. And if that's the case, hopefully, if you are a practitioner or something along those lines, that, you can be lighthearted about it and understand that these are just supposed to be jokes. But then again, you could be like me and still not find them funny anyways, because, again, comedies really aren't my thing. I think I had maybe 2 laugh out loud moments during the film. And yeah, there's I don't know. The film is okay. It's I mean, it's well shot. The acting is fine. I think where it really kind of falls apart is the well, not falls apart, but kind of dips down for me is in the writing. I I think there were things in this film clearly that were supposed to be funny that I just watched and was like, either that's really stupid, or I didn't find it funny, or it was a little flat, or I felt, you know what, had it been done a little bit differently, it would have been funny. I was going, I wanted to really enjoy it because it was a really, I mean, the story was okay. The story wasn't bad. The film itself was well done, but it's a comedy, and it just, I don't think I don't even know if Leslie laughed at all. Mind you, she wasn't really involved in the film. She wasn't didn't seem to really enjoy much of it. So she was, I don't know how much of it she paid actual attention to. So I do know that she was kind of more into maybe looking at her phone and looking up stuff than actually watching the film, because it didn't really capture either of us. So that being said, I'm not going to give it a recommend, even though I do kind of recommend the other films from this writer-director. But yeah, if I'm going to rate it anything, it's down the middle. It's a 2.5 out of 5 at best. Technically it's good. Acting is good. Directing is good. Sound, all that kind of stuff is good. I just found the jokes weren't great. Maybe this isn't his real forte. Maybe he shouldn't be. Maybe it's just a dry humor. I don't know. I'm not really, when it comes to comedies, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I'm sure maybe in the theater people would have been laughing their butts off. I don't know. But with Toronto After Dark being an at-home streaming thing this year, it's just me and Leslie, so we kind of have to feed off of each other, I guess, and seeing as how Leslie wasn't into it and I wasn't into it, the movie ends up being not into it, and that's essentially how we're going to look at it. There you go. That is my 2.5 star out of 5 review of King Knight, a Wiccan comedy for Toronto After Dark Film Festival, and our 31 Days of Horror 2021. More films come, but so stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Till next video, take care. Have a good one.